We are going, says we're live on Facebook now. All right.
Cheers. Awesome.
Cash call. Brian, how was your vacation?
You know, my vacation was great. The only problem with vacation is got to come back to work so you can do it again, right?
I know, man. Got to be back here again. Great to see everybody. We're back on Cash Call today. And you know what? Because we took such a nice vacation, we were away. We wanted to get you guys a beautiful, nice new guest, a featured guest here, Chris Smith. Chris, I don't even know if Chris needs an introduction, but we'll give him one anyway. Brian, you want to take that over?
Absolutely. So, you know, I've known Chris now for about 5 years. I've been a Curaytor client. Chris owns him and Jimmy Mackin and Curaytor. Chris wrote several books, People Work, Conversion Code, and we're going to tease you on something else that he's working on, and I'll let him handle that. But, you know, Chris is a sales guy, and that's what I love. There's a lot of people out there who are real estate agents doing everything, but Chris is a sales guy. I'm a sales guy. Dale's a sales guy. We love that. That's why I'm super excited to have Chris on today. So, cool. Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris. Tell us about your latest project and kind of where we're going.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I wrote the book on lead conversion. I've dialed for dollars for longer than most of the people on this call ever will. And I started in the boiler room. So I worked at Quicken Loans, you know, calling and doing mortgages. Before that, I worked for a billionaire named Lou Pearlman, calling and selling vacations. In between those two, I worked at Dial America, you know, calling and selling credit cards. Then I went and worked at Top Producer, where I was selling CRMs. And then I went to Dotloop, where I sold electronic software. And now, you know, at Curaytor, we're a marketing company and we sell, you know, products and tools. And what I learned doing all of that is that there is a science to sales. There is a repeatable framework that you can follow that leads to yes more than it leads to no. And when the conversion code came out, it just shined a light on the fact that too many people were winging it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, you know, let's talk a little bit about that science, because I think that's a really important thing. I've said this for years now. There's two ways to get more transactions. You can call more people, or heck, here's a better idea, do better with the people that you're already talking to. So I think that's where you're at. I think you fall under the same thing. So, you know, give us some insight on what that science looks like, where to start. The agent who thinks they're great, maybe something insight to say, oh, maybe I can look at that. So, yeah, you know, where's that for you, Chris?
Well, let's just be really clear. Marketing is more fun.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. And marketing gets you more fame. You know what I'm saying? No one really knows that many famous salespeople. They all know the marketing gurus, you know, right. But I think a lot of the famous marketing gurus are salespeople in disguise, like myself, you know, because what I learned is that if your funnel doesn't lead to a phone with someone on the end of it that knows how to close and pitch and convert, then your funnel is useless.
And expensive.
Very expensive. Like, you can't do branding at the beginning, right? Like, the way you build your brand is over time by working with lots of people. So I think the thing for me that I think we've done a good job of, whether it's teaching, coaching, or just, you know, eating our own dog food and doing it, is we love marketing because it feeds our sales team. And we also love sales. A lot of companies, they look at like sales guys as like the lacrosse bros. And then the marketing team is all the artists and all the cool kids. Right. And I just refuse to let that be true. If you're great at marketing, awesome. But being great at sales is hard too. There's a science to sales. The same way you would say, how do I get a better open rate on an email? How do I get a better click-through rate on a Facebook ad? How do I get a better conversion rate from a landing page? Well, why isn't anybody saying, how do I get a better close rate on the phone? Well, are there words that I can say so that more people say yes at a listing appointment, on the phone with a lead, on the phone with an expired, whatever that scenario may be? So the gift of gab is not enough.
Yeah.
Your tone matters, your mindset matters, your work ethic matters, but your framework matters. And so that's what I built. Was I said, you know what, looking at all my experience, what is a framework people can follow from the beginning of the call to the end of the call that could work for them? And it's a script. You can see the poster behind Brian. You know, I put a lot of thought and time into that. And that's what the conversion code is. It is a step-by-step way to do marketing and sales.
You know, Chris, that's fantastic. It sounds like you're touching on some of those principles, right? So you said it's a science. You obviously have principles around it because that's what science is built on. So Can you talk about some of those principles that would help the people that we have watching today? And these are the troops out there in the trenches getting shot at right now. And what can we share with them that'll help them?
Well, the first thing would be do marketing that's meaningful, because it's really hard to fix this if the thing that brought the person into this was spammy. Like I was reading an article today, Keller Williams is getting sued over cold calls to expireds.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're not great at marketing and you have to dial and smile, it's really hard to get great on the phone, right? So I would say start with looking at your lead sources. What is the content that's capturing? Is it this lightweight offer? So as an example, you can use a listing. You know this, Brian. You can go get hundreds of leads, and then you're going to call those leads and pound your head against the door because 98 of them are going to say, fuck you, right? 2 of them are going to say, you can help me, and then their credit score is 450, right? And then there's 1 that's real. So like if you're an agent, you're doing past clients, you're doing referrals, you're working your sphere, and then you got to go bang your head against the wall with internet leads, you're going to want to quit. But when you understand the principles, like you said, Dale, it gets a lot easier. Principle number 1, it's a numbers game. And you can't be offended if 3 or 4 out of 100 leads are good. That's actually very normal. So that would be part of it, is having the right expectation. This ain't your mom. This ain't your sister. This ain't your sphere. This ain't your past clients. These are strangers. And so the conversion rate of strangers is going to be way lower than what you're used to. But because you sell homes, who cares? The ROI is through the roof if you close 1 sale. If you convert 1 lead, it's all through the roof. So number 1 is just make great marketing and then have the right expectation. But number 2 is speed. I break it down into 3 acronyms: speed, tenacity, and a script. You have to be freaking fast. So if some dude is on Zillow and he's in front of the house and he's been looking on Zillow for a few months and he's finally like, fuck it, let me hit this guy up, speed matters. And this is why teams are winning. Because if you're a solo agent, you're by yourself and you're at a listing appointment, how are you going to quickly follow up with the 3 Zillow leads that came in during that hour? You're not.
Right.
And let me give you the stats. The ability to convert a lead in the first 5 minutes is 100x higher than in the first 30. Meanwhile, a lot of real estate agents don't even call you back the same day or the same week, much less the same hour. So you don't have days and weeks, you have minutes and seconds. Speed matters. That's why we have ISAs right here. If I could turn it, you would see them. That's why we have them, because Jeremy right now is doing a sales pitch. A real sales pitch takes about an hour. Well, while he's pitching, leads are coming in. And I know speed matters. So Rich is calling the new leads. That's his job. Jeremy's pitching the demos. That's his job. So that separation between church and state is really important because of the speed. The second principle is tenacity, Dale. I won't ask you guys even to admit this for yourself, but how often do we get a lead that we follow up with once or twice and then we move on?
I've done it. I'll be the first to admit. I'll tell you right now. My script used to be, you're going to buy in 6 months, call me in 6 months. That's the worst script in the world. Don't ever use it. Yeah. But yeah, we've all done it. And
well, if they don't pick up, I mean, you email them, they don't pick up. You text them, they don't pick up. You call, they don't pick up. Fuck it, I'm going back to work, right? Like, I get it.
Right.
But there's a science around what they call effort. So if you call 1 lead 1 time, your contact rate, right, the number that answer is under 50%, even if you call in 5 minutes. But when you go dial 2, dial 3, dial 5, dial 6, by the 6th dial, you're actually able to get 93% of these people to answer the phone. So if you think about, like, you get a lead and you have an action plan, let's say you're using Follow Up Boss like we use, or you're using another great CRM like Ylopo, whatever it is, Boomtown, Commissions Inc., Top Producer, there's a bunch of them. But what I find people do is they're not aggressive enough with their calls. You should be making 3 calls in the first day. You should call once, call again right away, call again an hour later. That is how you...
Chris, I'm going to piss them off. That's what we hear over and over again. Cover that, because I can't tell you the number of times, but I don't want to be too aggressive. I don't want to piss them off. What's your response to that?
Well, my response is, go back to my first point. We're doing real marketing. People are waiting on our call. People want our call. See, what happens is when you put the customer first, you don't have to be so desperate. We talk about attract, don't chase. But the reality is this. Calls that I get and miss are not, they don't bother me that much. You know the calls that I don't like? When the person's incompetent when I do answer. So if I have to ignore your call, I don't really care. Once you pick up is when it really matters. So now, and here's the great quote for you on this, Brian. Have you heard the Zig Ziglar quote about timid salespeople?
No.
I haven't. Give it to us.
Skinny kids, is that the way?
They have skinny kids.
I messed it up for you.
Right? So literally, it is your job to dial a lot of times. And again, I agree with you. If it was my mom or my past client or my sphere, I'm not going to be fucking pounding the phone for them. But again, this is the internet. Remember, the guy's in front of the house. You don't think he's going to go call the next lawn sign? You don't think he's going to go register again on another listing 24 hours later that he likes? Like, internet leads, there's a bunch of them compared to how many deals there are. So you got to be fast and you got to follow up a lot. Now, the other thing that people don't understand is when to call. Because clearly you want to call right away, but there's a thing called a call block, meaning 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the best time of the day to get people to answer. The second best time of the day is 4 to 6 p.m. So the way that you want to structure your day, and this is what we used to do at Quicken Loans, you wake up, you pound the phones, and you do not stop until you have an appointment or a deal. And typically that might take an hour or two of constant prospecting, but it happmes.
That's a good policy.
You do the same thing before you end the day. From 4 to 6, you pound the phones and you get another deal before you move on. So you don't have to spend 8 or 10 hours a day dialing for dollars if you do it really smartly. Now, the problem is if your calendar is controlling you and you're not controlling your calendar, you can't actually do anything I'm mentioning. You're going to end up calling in the car, in between appointments, during your lunch break. And unfortunately, people typically pick up in the morning or in the early evening.
True. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Chris. This is what I've been teaching now. And I teach this over and over and over again. And I bet you 5% of the people do it. If you're a salesperson today in real estate, what time should you check your email for the first time?
I would check it as soon as that call block was over.
But not before?
No.
And when do most people check it? I guarantee you most people roll out of bed and they hit the buttons on their phone.
No, before they're out of bed. When they're in bed, they're like scrolling through.
They're either in bed or they're in the bathroom. Let's be honest. They're in one of those two places. But let me,
the dirtiest thing ever.
Let me tell you guys what I've actually done to address this issue, because it's hard. I get a lot of emails too. I get a lot of notifications. I got a lot of people tagging me, texting me. I get it. I use an app you guys are going to love. It's not a mobile app, but it's like a web app. It's called Audios. Okay. It's called Audios Stash. It's audios.io. And what it does is I don't get my emails until 10 a.m.
That's amazing.
It sandbags them and it hides them from me. And then at 10 a.m., it dumps them all at once. And then I do that again at 4 p.m. It dumps them all at once. Now, you can also say, hey, if an email comes from this person, give it to me right away. Okay. So let's say you want to kind of ignore the distractions, but you still want to get a message from a client and prospect, or you want to get a message from like a lead source like Zillow, right? So you could basically say, hey, unless it's from these people or unless it's from here, I don't want to see it except for once a day. That's called batching your work. Because as you guys know, like, do you guys ever deal with problems?
No, never.
So
not all day long. No.
Like, you literally wake up and you look for problems, and then you're supposed to go pound the phones and be happy.
Right. My day sucks. My day sucks. My day sucks. Let me be happy.
And it's harder to do than it sounds. But using some of these really cool technologies like Audio Stash makes it a lot easier to avoid those distractions. I wrote an article. One of the most popular articles I ever wrote was called How to Change 2 Settings on Your Phone and Change Your Life. Those 2 settings were 0 push alerts. I have 0 push alerts for any apps, 0. Number 1. The second setting is you have to turn audio notifications off for text messages. So I do get a little badge when I get a text, or I do get a little badge if I miss a call, but I get 0 push alerts ever, and my phone never makes a sound even if I get a text message. You've got to do that stuff on purpose.
Yeah, that's a great.
Chris, I remember being at your conference, and as you notice, I'm not wearing a watch, but I remember how excited we all were about Apple Watches. And I can tell you right now, you could give me the absolute best Apple Watch and I'd hand it back to you, because what's that thing do? And this, I laugh at all the real estate agents who have these. They're basically, not only is this thing bugging, now I've got something that's literally hitting me every damn time a Facebook message comes in. All these things, we've got to stop acting.
Yeah. And how can you put your customer first if you're distracted all the time? I got a buddy named Blake. He's a lawyer. I don't even want to hang out with him anymore because all he does is check his fucking watch the whole time. It's just like, dude, take that shit off. So I agree. And here's what's so funny. Everybody wants to hustle. Everybody wants to grind. Everybody wants to get up at 5 a.m. And then they work inefficiently and they allow themselves to be distracted all day. Like, the way to work more is to have more focus in the hours you're already working. But everybody wants to hustle like Gary Vee. Well, the reason they have to is because they're making up for all the inefficient decisions they make each day.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I love it. Efficiency is actually my team's theme for 2019. How do we do all the same stuff we're doing in a shorter period of time so we can make the same amount of money or more, and then actually have a life? Because every real estate agent you talk to will tell you, boy, you know, I got in this business for flexibility, which is always makes me laugh. And then they follow it up with, and now I'm busier than I ever was.
Now,
and I work
24/7. That's the common phrase from agents.
Yeah, I don't like, whoever rebranded workaholism as hustling was a fucking genius.
It really is.
Right. Exactly. They just repackaged it.
I've heard somebody say skipping breakfast is now called keto. So it's just, this is marketing, baby. Words matter.
That's so funny. That's some spin.
All right. Hey, so Chris, let's talk a little bit about like direct phone calls just for a second. So you're on the phone with somebody. Let's talk about what you're looking for to do some discovery and just some things that we can do. And this is coming up. Dale and I are actually literally playing phone calls on this podcast sometimes and critiquing them.
Sure.
And what we found is that people suck on the phone. I don't know how to say it nicely, so I'm just going to put it out there. I'm sure there's some good people on the phone, but my own team.
Brian, let's say it this way. Let's say it this way. A lot of agents overestimate their skill on the phone. We'll put it that way.
Perfect. That's much nicer than they suck on the phone. So what are some things so step one, read Chris's book if you want to know what he thinks. But since we got him live, what are some of the keys that you're saying on a phone call when you've got someone who's actually interested? I'm not looking for the crazy, how do you overcome, I hate you.
Sure.
But, you know, a regular phone call, what are you looking for? What's your objective? How are you going into it?
Sure. Well, let me give you a couple stats on this. So there's a really cool technology that came out recently called Chorus.ai. Okay. Chorus. And what this does is it actually will listen to every phone call that you do, and it will start to gauge the sentiment of the rep and the caller. And what we found is that if you look at the top salespeople at Curaytor, and if you look specifically at talk time, okay, the top producers had about 30% of their time, okay, the lead was talking.
Okay.
And about 70% of the time they were talking. So, because think about it, it's a pitch, right? You feel you should be talking. You should control the conversation. It says right behind you. You're in charge, right?
Absolutely.
But the problem is when you're new and you don't know what to say, you say too much. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that says, if you don't have time to write a short letter, write a long one. Because it's actually way harder to be smart with your words and brief than it is to kind of information dump. So we've got one of our sales guys in there, Jeremy. He's great, but when he started, he was only letting the person talk 10% of the time. It was 90% monologue and 10% duologue. And look what it says right behind you, Brian. Conversations create closes. Monologues are not conversations.
No.
When I look at the data around Darren, and in the past, we had a really talented guy named Neil working here. They were much closer to like 30 or 40% was the lead talking. And they were more of that 60 to 40% talk range. Now, here's why this matters. Here's what they were doing and what Jeremy wasn't. And this is the big, I hope this is a big takeaway for your audience. They were selling a solution, before they established what the problem was.
Yep.
So you can't really pitch properly until you know the problem. You're pitching a solution, but your solution has to solve someone's problem. And if you don't dig deep, right? See, that's right behind you again, Brian. Dig deep or go to sleep. The ammunition that you need for the perfect pitch is in their gun. And if you don't pull it out of them, if they don't tell you, here's the right bullets for me, you're going to miss all your shots. So if you look at the conversion code, I have a technique called the 20-20-20 technique. The first 20 minutes of the call is not about us at all. It's about them learning about their situation, learning about their goals, digging deep, asking questions. Okay, great. Now that I've put 100% of the focus on you, now I can actually develop a plan that's for you. And we actually will take 20 minutes and say, you know what, let me call you back. I want to customize my proposal for you. And then we call them back 20 minutes later. Okay, great. I got it. Ready? Let's get into this. Grab a pen and paper. Here's what we can do. So there are so few people that are good at a one-call close that I found that you're almost better off to turn it into 2 calls on purpose. Because like you said, you got some jittery agent at the beginning of the call trying to figure out how he's going to close them at the end, and they haven't even said hello yet. Yep. So if you will remove the close from the first call, and then you will put it back in the last call, you'll never be worried about you until the right time. And that would be what we learned through the data from Chorus, what we learned through just watching these guys. You've got to dig deep. If you look at the conversion code script, it's plug and play. The way I teach pitching is called feature benefit tie down. Feature benefit tie down. Everybody knows their features, you guys. Oh, we work here. We got a lot of agents. And so we got cool tech. Hey, we do good marketing. Hey, we got everybody knows their features. But for you to understand the benefit of that feature to the person you're talking to, it actually requires listening, not talking.
That's great. Chris, define tie down for those watching that don't know.
Sure. So a feature would be, hey, Curaytor is going to help you capture seller leads. That's the feature. The benefit is you no longer have to chase around buyer leads that don't qualify anyway. Okay. So it's the feature, the benefit. The tie down would be very simple. It would be, wouldn't you rather focus on listings than buyers?
There you go. Get them to say yes.
Exactly. Just getting them to say yes before you go to the next feature. And the way most people pitch, Dale, feature, close. Right. And the benefit and the tie down are the only way that you can actually get them more excited than the cost. If you wait till the very end and say, what do you think? It's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But if after every little pitch, you're getting a little mini confirmation, you're going to feel really good by the end of the call to close them.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, guys, for all the people listening, that's so true in person too. If you're doing a listing presentation and you're talking for 25 minutes straight and you go, what do you guys think? They go, we think we're going to think about it because we can't remember we remember the very last thing that you said. We have no friggin' idea anything you said before that. And if you're not doing tie downs every step of the way,
yep,
you have no idea. And by the way, here's the great thing about a tie down too. If they say no, that means you didn't sell them on it. You get to try again. And people are so afraid to ask that question because what if they say, no, that sucks? Well, I guess we have an opportunity to try again.
You're going to really hate their answer to the other question, Brian. If they don't like the mini close, you're really not going to want to hear their answer to the other one. Let me give you another example of feature benefit tie down. Every agent talks about their marketing, right? Hey, we do great marketing. We do Facebook marketing. We're on Zillow. We have your listing's going to be all over the internet. The benefit of us doing that marketing is that you're going to sell your home faster and for more money. Isn't your goal to be out of here as quick as you can and get the highest price you can, ma'am?
Yes, it is, Chris.
So, and you guys are right. For us, like on this call, it's so natural. To teach it to someone, it's so awkward. But guess what happens? Eventually, it becomes natural. None of this was natural for Brian or Dale or myself.
No.
Things become natural through repetition. And the problem is if you're winging it, you're never doing the same thing, so you don't know how to get better. Meanwhile, if you're really good at sales, like if you've got your whole script down, you understand the framework, now you can be in the moment. Now you can ad lib. Now you can freestyle. But if you only ad lib and freestyle, it doesn't work.
True. Right. Chris, while we still have, so those were nuggets, man. I hope, and I'm sure everybody appreciates it. We're getting some great comments in here. Everybody's saying they love it. While we still have time, do you have any advice on what to do with objections, right? So somebody isn't going to do what you want them to do, when you want them to do it, or who you want them to do it with. Any kind of framework or any principles that you have that you can share around that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Oh, I just interviewed Jay Kinder. We have a podcast called Water Cooler, and I just interviewed him. So it was fun to kind of switch from interviewer to interviewee.
He's a good guy.
And I was asking Jay, like I was giving him some really tough objections to overcome, and he handled them really well. But what he said is true. If you're doing it right, there are no objections. So let me give you guys what that means. Number one, there's an acronym in my book called PUO. It's called Proactively Uncovering Objections. The last thing you want to do is wait till the end of a long pitch and then be like, so do you need to think about it? Like, let me guess, you want to talk to your wife? Let me guess.
You want me to call you back?
Yeah, like you know what's going to happen at the end. And so what we do instead is before we pitch, we actually give them a scenario that's sort of hypothetical, but let me give you the talk track for it. Hey, if I can go in the MLS and I can find some listings that you agree make sense, is there anything that would stop you from going and looking at those this weekend? Like, I'm asking that now remember, I did my digging deep and I made it about them, but that little proactively uncovering objections happens right after that. So I say, hey, if I go in the MLS and I pull the comps, and it looks like we can sell your home for a price that you agree makes sense, is there any reason I couldn't come by later today to meet with you and your wife? When you are brave, people aren't better than you, they're braver than you. And when you become brave enough to say that, guess what the person usually says? No, if it makes sense, I'll move forward. Well, what do you think my job's going to be when I pitch? My job is to make it make sense.
Make it make sense.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm getting their commitment. Hey, you've heard about Curaytor. You've been stalking us online. If there's an opening in your area and it works for your budget, is there any reason you wouldn't sign up today or tomorrow? We're asking that super early. And then guess what I do at the end of the call? It's like, well, earlier you said it made sense. You just said yes to everything I asked. Clearly it makes sense. Credit or debit to get started. You said you'd start today. People want to stick to their word, but you've got to be willing to ask them that. And the beauty of doing it early, you guys, is it's still hypothetical. If I find a listing that you agree makes sense, they're not really committing. That's the beauty of doing it early before the pitch. Hey, if hypothetically your home could sell tomorrow for more than you wanted, is there anything that would keep you from letting me come see the condition of it later this week? No, Chris, if that happens, great. Okay, cool. Well, if it happens, it happens. If not, thanks for your time. You know what I mean? So now here's the other thing, Dale. Even as good as you are and as good as we are, we all get objections. Like I personally sold the first 100 people at Curaytor. I personally did one-on-one calls with all 100 and closed them all. And man, I got a pretty good brand. I got a good following. People like me. I'm pretty successful. You don't think people told me they need to wait and think about it? You don't think people said, I'm already in a contract with Boomtown. Give me some time to look that over. You don't think a couple people said, Chris, this sounds great, but I've got to talk to my partner before I pull the trigger? You see what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
You either get objections or you're lying to yourself. Everybody does. Gary Vee's getting an objection right now from a Fortune 500 company that he wants to hire VaynerMedia. Grant Cardone is getting rejected right now by a huge dealership that's not buying his coaching. We just pretend we all get yeses. So there's one other thing that your audience has to understand is that when you get an objection at the end, you're going to want to use a technique called ARC, which is acknowledge, respond, and close again. Okay. So as an example, somebody, and here's the beauty of like sales. There's only like 5 objections. Let's be honest. I want to wait. I want to think about it. I got to talk to someone. The price is too high. I need to pray. Some people say they got to pray. That's like the one that doesn't happen as often, but I've had people say I need to pray.
That's the one that's so hard to deal with, right?
That's the one where you're in person, you grab their hand and go, all right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
You hit them with the praying hands emoji. But like, here's what's funny, because I actually talk about that in my book. Acknowledge what they said. Oh, you need to talk to your wife before you make a decision? I totally understand. You have to acknowledge the objection, because if you go straight to the like response, it kind of feels like a sales guy. But if you actually say, oh, you need to wait and think about it, I totally understand. I always wait and think about important decisions too. So the first step when you get a big objection is acknowledge it. The second one is respond to it. Okay. Oh, you want to make sure that your wife is on board? I'm going to make sure that she sees all the paperwork as well. She has to sign off on everything for this to move forward as well. Then you close again. Will she be there tomorrow when I come over at 3, or should we push it back until she's off work too? See what I'm saying? So I'm acknowledging the objection. I'm responding to it. And then I'm closing again. Oh, you need to wait and think about it? No problem. We're not even going to meet till later this week. You'll have a couple days to think about it. You're not obligated to list with me until you see the paperwork and sign. So should I come over tomorrow at 2 or 3? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you need to talk to somebody. Oh, you need to wait. Oh, you need to think about it. All you do is acknowledge, oh, great, you need to think about it. That's really smart. You should think about it. I can't believe that other people don't. They're stupid. You're smart. While you're thinking about it, here's what I'll be doing. And you're clearly going to think about it all the way till you sign, because if you don't sign, we're not working together. So I'll make sure that everything's crystal clear. You'll have a couple days to think about it before I come over. Can I come over at 3 or 5 on Friday? That's just closing again. That's your job. Now, the other last part of this, though, is sometimes they're not actually objecting. There's a thing called buying questions. And what I find is a lot of newer salespeople, they treat a buying question like it's an objection. So as an example, they might say, so Brian, how does your commission work?
No, I charge 6%.
That's a great question. Same thing. How does my commission work? Great question. Here's how it works. It'll be in writing when I come over. Can I come over tomorrow at 3 or 5? Like, you see what I'm saying? So you acknowledge, respond, close again. But that's not an objection. That's a buying question. If somebody says, well, how long is this going to take? How long is it going to take? Great question. Our current average days on market for our clients is about 8 days. So it's not going to take very long, but we'll look at how long your days on market will be when I come over tomorrow. Can I come over at 3 or 5? You see what I'm saying? Like, guys, you have to have that ultimate focus of the outcome you want, but then you have to play in the real world of like, you are going to get objections. You're going to get the price objection. You're going to get the weight objection. You're going to get the spouse objection. It is your job when you get it to answer it. But if it's a buying question, how's your commission work again? How's my commission work? How's your commission? Like, that's what it sounds like when you get defensive. How's my commission work? Great question. All the smartest people that I interview with ask that question, so I'm glad you brought it up. Here's how it works. Did you want me to come over tomorrow at 3 or 5? It's not that hard. We make it hard, guys.
And you know, I'm going to ask you to cover one more concept that's almost identical to that, and that's the thing. Honestly, I've given you credit for years. It's acknowledge, respond, pivot.
Yeah.
So there's acknowledge, respond, close, which you just covered, but it covered acknowledge, respond, pivot real quick, because one of the things that always pisses me off is if I ask a salesperson a question and they refuse to answer it. To me, the answer is in the respond. It's okay to tell them 6%, but then we pivot. So if you don't mind, cover that real quick.
Yeah. So the ARC is, you know, later in the call. You're closing, they're objecting, or they're, you know, and then you finish. The ARP, which is the same thing, acknowledge, respond, pivot, that's more so happening at the beginning of a call. So you get a buyer lead from Zillow and, you know, they pick up and it's like, hey, this is, you know, Brian calling to follow up. I saw you found a home on Zillow. And they're like, well, awesome. Like, I already have an agent, but I just had a quick question. You know, or they say, I don't really want to see the home. I just wanted to know if it was still listed. You know what I mean? Like, you get those same kind of lightweight questions up front. I call it a brick wall statement.
Yep.
And what you do to get around that, because remember, you got to have a conversation to get a customer. So their goal is to be like a McDonald's. Their goal is to come to you and say, I want a number 3. Is it available? And what bad salespeople do is they say, no, the number 3 is not available. Do you want number 4? Yeah. What the good salespeople do is they realize I'm not an order taker. And so but at the same time, I have to be in a little bit of a position of weakness or they'll just hang up on me, quite frankly. So if somebody says, hey, we're not interested in seeing the home, we've actually already got an agent. We just were curious if it was still for sale. That's tough, Brian, in the first 30 seconds, right? Yep. So I'm going to go right back to my technique. Oh, you guys just wanted to know if the home's still for sale? No problem. I'll be happy to pull that up for you. You always acknowledge it. Then I'm going to respond. I'm going to say, if you found it on Zillow, it probably sold about a year ago. And then I'm going to pivot to what I want to talk about, which is the digging deep stuff, which would be like, did you actually find the home using a mobile app or on your desktop website? Like, I'm just trying to get away from that question and get back to the questions I want to ask. So if somebody says, I've already got an agent. Oh, you've already got an agent? That's no problem. A lot of our best customers said that when they first talked to us too. What's your agent's name?
Bob Smith.
They don't know their agents.
Bob.
Yeah. With Susie something?
He's with Remax. I can't remember.
Yeah, he has a yellow jacket.
Exactly. Well, you guys were saying tease my next book. That's one of the things in my next book. You should never say, are you already working with a realtor? Because that's going to make everybody say yes. But if somebody comes to your open house, you say, hey, what's your real estate agent's name? Todd something.
My question is, how many houses have you looked at? And then they'll say, I've looked at 3 houses. Great. Who showed you those houses?
Exactly. But by making it specific, exactly. They don't even know their name. So that's another good example of proactively getting rid of an objection before you even get it. You're trying to tell me you have an agent. You don't even know their name. Let's not kid each other. Let's be adults here. So, but here's what I want everybody to do as homework. Write down all the objections you get. Write down your ARCs. Write down the brick wall early questions you get. Write down your ARPs. Because again, the world, like if you get a seller lead, here's what a seller lead is going to say. I didn't want you to reach out to me. I thought this was going to be a report I could download like on his estimate.
Right.
Oh, you thought it would be his estimate? No problem. We didn't want to trick you. We're sorry. Did you know that the Zestimates in your area can be highly inaccurate?
I didn't know that.
Would you like a Zactimate?
I like it.
I'm just bantering with you guys, but the point is I have thought deeply about this. I have written it down. I have studied it. I have tried it. And what happens is you end up with what I call wet techniques. Work every time. But you got to try a bunch of them to eventually settle into those wet ones. Hopefully my book can help you guys skip a bunch of crappy ones.
That's great. What's the book again for anybody who does not live in this country or was under a rock for the last 10 years?
It is in 7 countries. I'm just going to say that. It's crazy, man. Poland, Russia, Japan.
I should have said this planet. Anybody who's not on the
India,
planet.
Yeah. It is. My book is The Conversion Code. You guys are going to love it. It's on Audible. You can get the ebook or you can go on Amazon. My first book is People Work. And my next book, which I want to do a big partnership with Lab Coat Agents, is called Exactly What to Say. Because as you guys have seen during this call, there's more to learn than the framework. Eventually, you got to say something. And if you think it's hard to answer some of these questions, imagine when someone says, hey, Brian, I appreciate everything that you said today, but you don't do a lot of luxury listings. So I'm going to use Susie.
Right.
Yeah. And,
it's tough. It's tough. So there's a lot of situations in real estate that happen in the back channels that nobody talks about. So the new book is called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate. And if you guys want me to come back on to do a class about that, just leave a comment below, hit the heart button, and you guys can let Dale and Brian know. We'll do another one in September.
That sounds great. Fantastic. Chris, we speaking on behalf of everybody watching, that was fantastic. We really appreciate all the value that you've given, and we wish you luck and Godspeed getting that next book published.
Thank you. Can't wait. Thanks for having me on. Lab Coat Agents, great community. Keep doing what you guys are doing. Keep moving the industry forward. Everybody needs to learn. Not everybody needs more tools and products, but everybody needs to learn.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate you.
No problem.
Thanks, Chris.
Are we off? We're off.
Cool.
We're off now. Cheers.
Awesome,
Chris.
Chris, I feel like you've done that before.
Yeah, I've done a few. I've done a few interviews and I've interviewed a few people, but I love it. It never gets old, and I always appreciate anybody that has me on. So thank you guys. And I'm not a member of that community and I'm not active in that group, but I clearly know about it and know how, vibrant and popular it is. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Keep in touch. Thanks, Brian. See you, Dale.
Hey, Chris.